Okay, welcome back to Metflex and Chill. I'm your host, Rachel Gregory, and I'm here with my good friend, Cristina Curp from the Castaway Kitchen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited you're here. I'm excited to chat about all the things today.
Yeah.
So why don't you, before we get started, just give a little bit of your background, like your journey, your health journey. Obviously, not like your entire life
Not the
journey, but
entire medical history.
yeah, maybe another time. But yeah, just give us a little background of how you got to where you are today, and yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you the nutshell version. I was a restaurant chef. Before that, I worked in my bachelor's in anthropology and sociology, and I loved research, and so that's what I did: qualitative and quantitative research for marketing. Left that corporate world was like killing my soul. Went to work with my mom, who owns this farm to table restaurant. Like fell in love with cooking professionally. Did that for a bunch of years. Um, had a baby, all this stuff. Moved to San Diego, where you are now.
Hmm.
My husband's in the Navy, and I just found myself just really sick. Like I was 30 years old with this baby, thinking like this is supposed to be like the beginning of my life, and I was miserable. I have an autoinflammatory skin condition called hidradenitis suppurativa. I've struggled with my weight my entire life. I mean, like from day one. Like people don't believe me. I know a lot of people like they gain weight maybe in college years or 20s. No, no, no. This was like there wasn't a day in my life where I wasn't overweight. Like even as a baby, and it all snowballed. Like low self-esteem, this skin condition, random symptoms, man, which of course now we know, right?
Hmm.
Like constipation, bloody gums, joint pain, ear, nose, and throat infections, all that every single year, bronchitis, strep throat. Like I was on so many antibiotics growing up, and so it all kind of compounded to after having a baby being like just rock bottom. um, and luckily back then the Google machine still worked how it was supposed to. And I Googled like just searching how to heal, what like holistic food, I don't know. And I found a post on Rob Wolf's website
Hmm.
um, about someone who had my skin condition and put it into remission through with food, with their diet. I was like, whoa, what? like, like you food? like no doctor has ever mentioned food. And that was like that rabbit hole that I never came out of. Paleo, autoimmune protocol, Whole30s, keto, the ancestral template, like all of it. Um, and then I started sharing my recipes because, you change your diet. That's so hard for people. Like you and I, we've been in this forever, but you talk to someone who's standard American diet and all of a sudden you're saying you have to change your diet to change your life, to get healthy. And they're like crying. They're like, what do you mean I can't eat my oatmeal or I can't have pasta and for me, because food is my jam, I was like, I was still eating great. It's like I can still make it. So I was like, let me put these recipes online and help other people cook in a way that's gonna like change their life too. And yeah, and then that birthed the Castaway Kitchen, which started a blog and it took off and I got a book deal. And then I went back, I did a nutritional therapy association training for NTP, just published another book and the rest is history, as they say.
That's awesome. So your book is just coming out now, right? Your second book?
Yeah, March 10th it
Tell,
comes out.
it's
And
called Made Whole, Made Simple, right?
yeah,
And the first one was Made Whole. I
yeah,
love I love that. That's
thank you.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so basically, you kind of discovered kind of the healing power of food, I guess we could call it. In terms of like the autoimmune stuff, there's some people who don't really even understand what
Right.
autoimmune diseases are and like how they develop and where they come from. So can you just give a little bit of a description of like what is an autoimmune disease and like where how they develop and
Yeah.
obviously not why because that would go into a lot of things, but kind of just like the
Right.
overview.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's over 100, like there's over 100 diagnoses that fall under the autoimmune disease umbrella. But essentially, with all of us, our immune system is attacking healthy cells in our body, and this manifests in different ways for people. If you have rheumatoid arthritis, it's going to be in your joints. If you have, MS, it's going to be in your nerves. If you have Hashimoto's, it's your thyroid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the root cause, I mean, a lot of people correlate leaky gut to autoimmune disease, but I don't feel like that's a factor, but it's not the underlying cause. But a lot of things that lead to this, it's like it's gene expression, it's epigenetics. And so if you have a history, oftentimes a big stress event or just years of eating inflammatory foods and being on a lot of medication can lead to that. And so oftentimes people go undiagnosed for a long time, like people who have like crazy just symptoms of, you know, like those mystery symptoms, like that fatigue that comes and goes, or the brain fog, or this like pain, this and that's the thing, because when you have an autoimmune disease, you're not necessarily always sick. You have flares. So it flares up and then it goes away. Flares up and then it goes away. And your blood work can be normal 1 month and like crap the next. So doctors sometimes have a hard time pinning this. And so they often develop, I think that a lot of the factors, of course, is like over medication, right? Like too much antibiotics, and from nutrient deficiencies from side effects of medication. A lot of distress, like, you know, it's not just leaky gut, it's upper GI, not like, you know, insufficient stomach acid or just not enough enzymes. And, you know, your immune system is all day, every day saying like, this is me, this is not me, this is me, this is not me. Because when you think about like what we're all made of, right? The particles that we're all made of, like down to the atom, it's like everything is kind of made up of the same thing, just in a different configuration. And so our immune system is literally all the time, 24/7 right now, like saying like, this is me, this is not me, this is me, this is not me. But when you're eating foods and they're going into your system and then they're escaping your gut because there's, you know, essentially like gaps in the lining, then all of a sudden you have this isn't me reaction from your immune system. And it's like sending, you know, like the forces, troops to go. And so you get this inflammation, right? Because the immune system uses inflammation to combat things. And so you get into a chronic inflammatory situation. And that's when you start getting these symptoms. And it's hard because it's so prevalent. It's like our modern day plague, autoimmunity. It's incredible how prevalent it is right now, especially in women. And I think, again, like you said, if we talk about the how and why they're coming up, it's a whole other, you can write, like, we can do a whole show just on that, like, but environmental toxins, stress, you know, digestion, those kind of things.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and it's like so hard too, because it's like for me, what I think about is they all kind of stem from, you know, the underlying cause of inflammation and things like that. And then it's like when you go to the doctor and you have these symptoms, like you said, they don't know what to do because, you know, you can usually it's like, here, take this medication, try this out. Whereas, you know, what you need to be addressing is the root cause. And that comes from, you know, mostly what you're putting in your body on a daily basis, which comes back to the food and the nutrients you're consuming.
Right.
So I think this like using food as medicine concept is like so powerful, but I just think that it's still, you know, a little bit like people
New.
don't, yeah, it's new and people don't really understand it or believe it. And so kind of tell us about how you are using, especially from your new book, right?
Yeah.
I know you talk about like the front part of the book is all about kind of assessing different symptoms and things like that. And
Right.
obviously we can't go through every single one, but
Right.
how have you found a way to like use food as medicine with yourself and I guess with your clients? And that's kind of a general question, but
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it makes sense. So it is hard because you're right. People don't know and they go to their doctors, and unfortunately, I mean, there are a lot of doctors right now that are starting to look at diet, you know. Chris Kresser does a lot of work with this. So there's a DAP program and like working with practitioners. But yeah, for the most part, people aren't getting the directions from their healthcare providers to look at their diet when it comes to chronic illness. I was that person. I mean, Rachel, I was livid. I mean, I've like learned to let it go. But when I realized the impact that diet has had on this chronic condition that I lived with for 18 years, and it's debilitating and embarrassing and painful. I mean, it's literally scarred my body physically, but also emotionally.
Mhm.
And I lived with it for 18 years and not one doctor told me to change my diet.
That's like
So
malpractice to me, right?
and the fact that people are like, oh, it's just correlation. I'm like, it's not. So you remove the inflammatory foods. You know, you have to really look at, unfortunately, we've normalized acid reflux. We've normalized, you know, people headaches. People are popping ibuprofens and Tylenols and taking Prilosec, and they don't realize like their body is telling them something is wrong. So we've normalized these symptoms from our body, and then we just eat like crap, and then we medicate. And so I realized I was that person. I was on Nexium. I was on Tums, on Prilosec. I took ibuprofen every day of my life for years
Mhm.
because of being in pain. And I'm telling you now, I haven't taken a medication in over 5 years, and I've never been healthier. And all I did was change the way I eat and my lifestyle and prioritize real food. So the ancestral template, like I'm such a proponent of it. Like you want to know how to eat, like how did our ancestors eat? Like, we have not evolved in 10,000 years. Like, our DNA is the same from since the before industrial farming. Yet in just the span of the last 100 years, our diet has completely changed. So we went from eating from, first of all, we were hunting or foraging or farming our own food, to going to the grocery store and buying boxes of shelf stable, completely processed Frankenfood. So it's the first time in history that people are actually like nutrient deficient but also overweight at the same time. Like, think about how that doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. Like, yeah, exactly. If you think about it, it literally makes no sense, but it is what we are facing right now.
It's what we are facing. And so by kind of just shucking conventional wisdom and being like, okay, I'm gonna walk my own path. And it's scary because you're gonna have family members that tell you you're crazy, you have to listen to your doctor and don't eat all that fat. You know, what are you doing? To just being like, I have to listen to my body and having that confidence. So food as medicine for me is focusing on removing the inflammatory foods. If it wasn't, if it was made in a lab, don't eat it. Like, don't buy packaged foods if the ingredients are more than 3 or 4. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, yeah, right now there's some great paleo brands. There's a few things, you know, but you don't need any of that stuff. Plants and animals, like,
Mm-hmm.
stick to plants and animals, stick to nutrient dense foods, simple, like, yeah,
Yeah.
and diverse, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, eat seafood, eat oysters, you know, bone marrow, like, eat the bone broth, eat the weird bits, like, eat organ meats, you know, like, eat how humans ate
Yeah.
before, you know?
Yeah, I like to tell my clients like at least 80 to 90% of the food they put on their in their mouth on a daily basis should either have had a face at some point or grown from the earth at some point.
Yes.
So when you think about your food and you're looking at it before you eat it or you're planning it out, like just answer those two questions and then think and then
And then
eat the food
proceed.
if it
Right.
came from the earth or it had a face.
Right. A
Just
hundred
because you're thinking
percent.
about it.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little about because this podcast is obviously structured around the idea of metabolic flexibility. That's something that I've been just obsessed with for the last year, 2 years. And so, kind of tell me about because I know you are in like you practice keto, and I feel like you are definitely in this mindset as well of metabolic flexibility. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to
100%.
be um, for example, like I kind of talk about how being metabolically flexible is greater than being in ketosis 24/7. So what are your thoughts on that?
So the most basic thought when it comes to that is this. The reason we do any of this, right? And actually, when I interviewed Mark Sisson, he mentioned this. It's like, it's for enjoyment. The reason to do any of this, to feel good, to get healthy, is to enjoy life, to be able to enjoy life, right? So if your diet is making you so, like, insulin sensitive, or like the point where you're like, where you cannot take any form of carbohydrates because it makes you feel ill, or you whatever, like any form, and this is of course someone who doesn't have, like, you know, diabetes, right?
Mhm.
But if a regular person is just eating themselves into almost like an intolerance to to whole food carbohydrates, you're backing yourself up into a corner. So you're not going to have that freedom of, if what if you're traveling, experiencing new cultures, what if it's a special occasion, right? Because I believe that we should derive pleasure from food. I mean, we are like the only animals. I mean, us and like rats. Like, we love. It's true. Like the omnivore's dilemma. It's like we eat everything under the sun. We create. I mean, we cook our food. We change it. We're like alchemists. Like, it's. I think that's a beautiful gift that we have, and I don't. So, and I also think that it makes you. It just gives you more flexibility. Like,
Mhm.
literally, metabolic flexibility gives you more flexibility in your life as a whole.
Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
agree. So for the mental aspect and emotional aspect, I think that's a big one. And
Yeah,
then of
I
course there's
love
other,
that.
yeah, but there's
Yeah,
other benefits, right? And you know, do that a lot with your clients.
yeah, for sure. And it's like I feel like I wish I would have known this like years ago when I did start keto because it's this is kind of where my clientele comes from. It's like you start keto and you get all the amazing benefits from it, right? And then for me too, it's like, wow, I can focus. I don't think about food 24/7 anymore. And so I'm like, well, I'm never going to go back to carbs because I love how I feel. But then you kind of keep going with it and it's like, oh crap, well now I look at a sweet potato and I'm scared to eat it or whatever, a whole food that comes from the earth. And so you kind of develop this for me, it was, we were so fat phobic for so long. And now I feel like a lot of people, especially in the keto space, are suffering from carb phobia, right? It's like we kind of flip this switch. And so what I think is like living a low carb lifestyle should be, in my opinion, and what I strive to do is have that as like your home base, right?
Right.
Keto, low carb, mostly more so low carb is like the ultimate home base because that is the ultimate anti-inflammatory base to be at.
Right.
But introducing carbs to allow yourself to be more metabolically flexible and use them when you need them, whether it's the emotional aspect of it, the performance aspect of it, the hormonal aspect of it, all of that. So I love what you said, and especially brought up the point of like food is, you should be enjoying it, and you shouldn't, look at a sweet potato and be scared to eat it. You should be able to enjoy what your life, right? This is real life, unless you are treating a specific disease or mental disorder or something, for example, that you have to be in ketosis 24/7. You have to have high ketones to treat that specific impairment, right?
Right.
Or you won't, survive. If that's the case, then I do think that that is
Right.
important, right?
Right.
But yeah, there's this concept of kind of carb phobia now. And so did you ever like go through it? Because I know you went keto for a little while, or tell me about like your kind of journey through keto and low carb and all that.
Yeah, so I came from the paleo camp, which is interesting because when I transitioned into keto, I realized, oh, most people here didn't come via the paleo world. They came from standard American diet to keto, which is why I often, when I first started like looking up keto, I was like, I can't eat that. Like, like I'm not eating that, any of that. And so I would like hashtag low carb paleo for the longest time before I embraced my full ketoness. Um, so I had already done all the elimination protocols, right? I'd found out my trigger foods. I had removed anti-inflammatory foods. I was on, modified paleo diet, but I did rely very heavily on starches during those times. And I think that I was in that, I think I'm a little insulin resistant. Like I did the 7-day carb test outlined in Wired to Eat. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a huge eye opener for me because I was like, whoa. I mean, and I lost a ton of weight. I mean, I remember I lost 35 pounds pretty fast when I transitioned to like paleo and AIP. And like, I think it was inflammation and just leaving my body. But then, and I was feeling really good and I was starting to work out. And like, it was just, this is like during that whole evolution, right? Like I'm switching out my home products for non-toxic stuff and all this stuff. So I was really kind of finding my way through this holistic world. But yeah, I read Wired to Eat and then I read the Primal Blueprint, and Mark Sisson kind of talks about those fat burning phases and all that. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this out. And then, do you know Michelle Burleson? She wrote, she does, she wrote Fat Burning for Female, like a little 72-page book. But
I
the
feel like I know what you're talking about.
Fat Burning Female. Anyway, right now I forget the name of her thing. Anyway, but she had this little book, and it was keto, but it's funny because she had carb books in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm reading this book, and it's about how like fat burning for women. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. And so I transitioned and I was doing my fatty coffee and intermittent fasting and my workouts. And she was always about these kettlebell workouts. And then I would do sweet potatoes around the workouts. And I did that program and I really liked it. I felt amazing. And after that, I was like, and then I started seeing the stuff online. And then I got scared of the sweet potato and I stopped eating my carbs. And I went about 2 years of like pretty low carb. I mean, I still cooked with some carrots and stuff, but I can't have nightshades, so I have to like compensate for vegetables in my diet, and color. So, and I did, Rachel, I did get the little carb fear, mostly just thinking that, oh my gosh, is it going to make me like my blood sugar spike? Is it going to be inflammatory, or is it going to make me, I don't know. I didn't trust my body anymore. I felt like this disconnect with my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was like, through my NTA program, and you and I remember I called you when I did my blood sugar regulation module. I'm like, we need to talk some things over. Like I need clarity here. And I remember thinking when I really had a true understanding of blood sugar regulation, I realized carbs are not the enemy, especially when eating whole food carbs,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're active. You need them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started incorporating them into my diet, and I feel excellent when I carb cycle. And sometimes it's like today, I like using examples, right? So yesterday was like a 1 meal a day for me. Yesterday, I woke up, I had my little chaga because I'm not drinking coffee anymore. had my little mushroom tea with a little bit of ghee in it. And then come noon, I had some leftover meatballs with broccoli, right? It was a pretty good meal. And then I went to this event, got home kind of late, didn't want to eat, went to sleep. I woke up super hungry today. And so, because of course I hadn't eaten since like noon the day before. So I actually polished off some leftover pate that I had with a few apple slices in the morning with my little mushroom tea. And then I went to the gym, and that was at 7 a.m. and it's 12:30 now. And just because I had some apple slices this morning, I'm not hungry. I'm not dizzy. I'm not like, oh my God, I'm out of keto. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not like kicked off the keto island. Like, I'm probably in ketosis right now because I had a few apple slices and then went to the gym, you know?
Yeah. And
And
because
so
you're so like you've developed this metabolic flexibility and
flexibility.
you under like your body knows, okay, like yesterday, like you said, you only had one meal a day, but like if you think of a lot of people in like who've never been in ketosis or experienced intermittent fasting or even tried it, like they're not gonna think that they can even do it. Like it's all mental
Right.
too as well. But not just mental, but like your body as well like goes through it. And so that's why with metabolic flexibility, it's like for me, that's the ultimate end goal. That's what we should be teaching people to strive for. But you'll never be able to get there unless you teach your body how to tap into its fat stores for energy so that, if you, for example, yesterday, you ate and you're not like starving an hour or two later, which is what people are suffering from. And that's exactly what you're saying, why we're obese, but we're also nutrient deficiency and we're having all these packaged foods and it's just like complete disaster. But then on the other end of the spectrum, it's like exactly what you said. Like you don't have to necessarily be in ketosis 24/7, but as long and you can have an apple when you want it or whatever, and as long as your body can kind of be in that flexible state, it's like for me it's like that is the ultimate place to be, right? Like that
Right.
is like should be the gold standard in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's why I'm just like so passionate now because I did exactly what you did too. Like I went through the struggles and years of trying different things out, suffering from fearing protein, fearing carbs, like going down the fasting rabbit hole, like I like to call it. And especially like with women, especially like there is a saying, women are not small men. And I have definitely, just through myself and through the clients I've worked with who are mostly women, it's completely true. Like I feel like men are like nothing against them, but they have it a little bit easier, especially when it comes to being in ketosis and following, dietary guidelines and things like that, because they don't have more of the sensitive hormones that we do. So, in your kind of opinion, and just from what you've studied and been exposed to over the years, what have you seen the importance of women not maybe, incorporating carb ups and
Right.
why that might be important for things like their hormones or, this new, it's not, well, it's kind of a new concept like HPA axis dysfunction, which if you want to chat a little bit about that, a lot of people don't
Right.
know what that is. Is that something you
Yeah, yeah.
read about? Okay.
So, what people have to understand is that keto is a stressor on the body. Like it's a positive one, like working out, like going to the sauna, like fasting, but it is still a stressor on the body. And what happens, especially with women, is we have this tendency to like we love to like I call it the escalation effect. It's like, okay, we're gonna change our diet, we're gonna go keto, awesome, great. Now we're gonna start working out every day, hit workouts, awesome. Now I'm gonna start fasting every day, great. So I'm like gonna wake up, I'm gonna be fasting, I'm gonna drink coffee, I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna be keto, it's gonna be awesome.
Oh
And
my
it's
God,
like,
you're
you know, and it's like, whoa, slow down, Nelly. Like you're like that's your because you're now it's too many stressors and like maybe some of these things are positive,
Mhm.
but you pile them on top of then your job, your kids, financial stress, whatever, your husband, your boyfriend, whatever's going on, like your dog died, like I don't know, man, like life can be stressful. And so all of a sudden these things that are would normally be great, they're a stressor on the body and you're creating a chronic cortisol output situation. And what happens is that like, yeah, cortisol is amazing. Like cortisol is great. It has an anti-inflammatory effect. It makes us feel awesome. It helps us survive. However, you get to that point where you can exhaust the cortisol. Like you can essentially, your body's like, I can't produce anymore. But of course we need it for our fight or flight response. So our body will steal from our sex hormones and our other hormones to supply that cortisol for our body for like, fight or flight. Because like, and then that's when people lose their period, women lose their periods. And, there's a lot of other, you get adrenal fatigue or the HPA axis dysfunction essentially, where when you get into that point where think about like, you're not losing weight, you know, like women, like, I'm doing all the things. I'm in a deficit. I'm working out. I'm
Mhm.
fasting. I'm not losing weight. That's why, because your body's too stressed out. Because guess what's going to happen when your body is stressed out? Your primal little brain, you're like, is saying it's famine, there's war, there's food scarcity. Like, like, I'm not letting go of any of these fat stores because we need these to survive. And think about, like, we as women, the biological directive is to reproduce.
Mhm.
And so that's also why we store more fat, because our bodies are always like, oh, we got to have, calories for the baby making. And
Mhm.
so when we put that at risk, essentially, and when your body doesn't feel safe, that's when it's going to like shut down. And so many women run into that in the keto space. I feel like, I mean, I even did it. And like, not so much with layering on these things, but my life is crazy. Like, we've had a very crazy year. We just closed on a house. My husband's deploying, book launch, everything. And I was doing Orange Theory. And, of course, you're like, well, I want to like lose weight faster, so I'm going to keto harder. But then I'm going to do Orange Theory because they say HIIT working out is really good for fat burning. So I'm going to fat burn while I'm fasted. It's like, and you might feel good for a while, like that high, like that's
Mhm.
your cortisol. That's your like
Mhm.
resistance reaction phase. That's when you're like really feeling super pumped. But girl, that you're gonna like drive that train off a cliff.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think stress, and this is kind of what I talk about in my Keto Forum program, and we went through the first round last year, and a huge piece of it was, um, we started with the diet, right? And that's where I like to start, like the nutrition side of things, make sure, that's all in check. But the underlying goal is to teach you that stress management and sleep and all of these other things, like they are so powerful. If you are not sleeping, if you are not managing your stress, it doesn't matter how well you eat. Yes, you can be in a deficit and lose some weight, but yeah, maybe you'll lose the weight, right? But are you going to maintain that long term? Absolutely not.
Nope.
And what is the point of losing it? You
To
know,
gain it back.
yeah, exactly. And you're just, going, it's like that yo yo cycle. You're going in and out of it, and you're thinking, oh, it's just because I'm eating more. And it's no, it's because you are stressed out. You don't understand how to manage your stress. Maybe it's because you've been keto for a while and you're kind of stuck in this mindset that I have to be in ketosis or I have to be low carb forever. I can't have another carb or I'm just going to blow up. So I think that's the struggle that's actually like really, really affecting, especially women,
Mm-hmm.
and especially like hormones and all of these things. So I think it really comes back to like the education piece of
Right.
it and like understanding not only what you're doing, but like why you're doing what you're doing and why you need to be incorporating these different things into your overall lifestyle. Yes, nutrition and what you eat is very, very important, but how much are you exercising? Exercise is important, but like you said, keto is a stress to your body, exercise is a stress to your body. They're good stresses. Fasting is a stress to your body. These are good stresses, but too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And it's
Right.
like, right? So yeah, that's just something that we both struggled for it. And I feel like you have to kind of go through it, especially like when in our shoes, like we're, in this every day, we're teaching about it, we're learning about it. And like when you go through it and realize that, wow, like you found something, you find like why this is happening. It's like light bulbs go off and then you're just like, crap, I just want to share this with everybody else who's suffering. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to do with this podcast and everything like that. Um, but yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about exercise. So
Yeah.
for I was kind of like when you mentioned the Orange Theory and things like that. So I actually started keto when I was doing CrossFit. And at first it was awesome because I was getting like all like the recovery. For me, it was the recovery benefits in terms of just like not having a lot of inflammation. Um, but at some point, that obviously the high intensity and things like that, it just was not a good situation. So, what, like for you, with your exercise kind of journey over the past few years, what have you done in terms of like after, like, are you still doing Orange Theory or have you kind of moved to something different?
Yeah, so I didn't work out at all. So people have to know this from me. Like, and if you're just starting out and you're like, well, I don't like, where do I start? Like, I was a grown ass woman who had never really worked out, like had a regimen. Like, I didn't know how to lift weights. And so I started slowly during like the paleo, because I did have a lot of exercise intolerance with my autoimmunity, which that happens with people with autoimmune disease where like the stress of a workout can induce an autoimmune flare.
Mm-hmm.
So I started slow, hikes, bike rides, long walks. Then I escalated to Zumba. So I started taking Zumba classes on base because I'm a military spouse in Hawaii. And my Zumba instructor was a former bodybuilder. And I mean, her body was banging. And Ashley was just so knowledgeable. And then she had a baby. And when she came back from maternity leave, she was like, I really want to like get lifting again. And we kind of became friends. So she's like, why don't you come work out in my garage? I'll show you how to lift and we can work out together. And so she taught me the basics. She taught me how to do deadlifts and back squats, and we started putting together, my other neighbor, and we started putting together these like the resistance training. And so we would do some Tabata style. So some were cardios, we like do burpees or like kettlebell swings in there, things, sprints. So we did a lot of Tabata style stuff for a long time. And then I got really into heavy lifting. And that's when I fell in love with like training hard and like getting my deadlift, and I did that for a long time. And then we moved here to Virginia. And that killed me a little bit because I didn't have my gym and my people and, my like, I don't know. It's hard when you're out of your routine. And that's when I joined Orange Theory because I was like, well, I'm here. There's an Orange Theory around the corner. I'll do that. And I loved it at first because it got me running. I hate running, but it got me to run. And there's rowing in it. And I used to be in crew in high school. And like, there's a lot of redeeming moments where I was like crushing these 5Ks. However, I will tell you this, when I crushed that 5K row, I was in Miami, and I remember that week I had eaten a bunch of carbs, and I tried to do another row like that when I was like fasted and like on a super low carb week, and I couldn't do it. I didn't have the energy. I could do, I realized I can lift heavy when I'm fasted. I can lift heavy in keto, but I cannot do intense cardio like that. Mm-hmm. So after a few months of Orange Theory, low carb, like really low carb, I was not recovering from my workouts. I was fatigued. I mean, I would have to like nap afterward. I was like, what? Who am I? Like, I don't nap. And so I didn't feel good anymore. I didn't feel good anymore. So I was like, so honestly, I canceled January 1st. Instead of being that person signing up for the gym, I was the one canceling my gym membership. And I took a little bit of time off of the gym. And you know what's interesting? Going back to like not being scared and taking care of your body and babying your hormones, I took like 3 weeks off of working out. And in that time, I thought, I'm not going to track anything. I'm just going to eat paleo. I'm going to eat intuitively. I had more carbs than I normally do. And you know what happened? Not a damn thing. I didn't even gain an ounce, And it's like, that's just a true testament to like, you're eating the right foods and you're doing what your body needs,
Yeah, for sure.
And so now I'm back at the gym 3 days a week, heavy lifting. The only cardio I'll do is either the stair climber for like 15 minutes or kettlebell swings. And I'm just doing like heavy, so yeah, I love resistance training. I think every woman needs to lift. I think when you learn the power of growing muscles and how badass you feel, it gives you freedom from the scale. Mm-hmm. Because you realize when you're putting on muscle, the scale might not be moving, but your body looks different. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, screw the scale. I look hot.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. Like, so that's kind of when I went through my transformation like a year ago, before that I'd been doing CrossFit for a while. And when I was doing CrossFit, it was really just, I wasn't focused on any like body composition goals. I was kind of just in this, time where I just wanted to go and get a good workout in and, be in that competition, like I had that competition, I had my people and it was fun and it was enjoyable and I loved it. And then I got to the point where I was like, oh, I kind of have some like body composition goals that I want to, work on. And so I actually got injured, which is what happened. And I had to take time off from CrossFit. And I told myself, I was like, I'm never going to go to a Globo gym, like a regular gym. And I was like, that's just so boring. But then I kind of like put that mindset aside. And when I started going back to the Globo gym is what people call it, and like actually following a program where it was like legitimate long-term progressive overload focused lifting, that's when things started to change. And so I was not doing cardio and I was just lifting heavy and following a progressive overload program, which just means like every time you go in the gym, you got to do a little bit more each time, like whether it's another rep, another set, anything like that. And it just completely changed everything. And I always knew that in the back of my head, like, lifting weights changes your body and things like that. But if you don't follow like a structured program, it's really hard to know if you're even making progress. And then also, building on that progress. And then, like you said, with cardio, it's like, I feel like it's getting a little bit better. Like, you don't see, before it was like women would just be on the treadmill or on the elliptical, and it's like you feel good when you're doing this thing, when you're doing these things, because you're sweating, right? And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm doing so much. Whereas like if you go lift weights, maybe you're not even breaking. Like sometimes I don't even break a sweat,
Right.
but it's not what's happening in that moment. It's like what's happening to
Yeah.
your muscles. What are you doing, like
Right.
to your actual body, which is so much more beneficial than like doing chronic cardio. And it's not that cardio is bad, but if you're just doing it chronically and you're not lifting weights, like your body is not going to look like what you want it to look like.
Right.
So yeah, exactly. So you notice like when you started, and there's nothing wrong with Orange Theory and things like that, but I feel like it's kind of, if you're going to Orange Theory like 3 to 4 days a week, you're stressed, you're, strict keto, no carb ups, you're not sleeping, all these things, like that's just a recipe for disaster. And I think that eventually if you're doing that, eventually you're going to realize that. So if you're someone out there who's doing that, maybe take a step back and say, okay,
Right.
what's my stress level like right now? Am I sleeping? Am I going to, Orange Theory or CrossFit 4 days a week and, feeling great during the workout and right after the workout, but maybe like every other part throughout the day is just kind of sucking or whatever. And you're just not feeling, like you said, you're
Right.
just not feeling good. So I think that's
Right.
like a huge piece of, especially with women who are looking to change their body. It's like, all right,
Right.
maybe we need to step back and pick up some heavy dumbbells and see what we can do with those, because that is just, it just changes the game. And kind of tell me in terms of, so for me, it's like when I am lifting, I feel, or when I can lift like a little bit heavier, when I go back into the gym the next day or the next week, it's like the feeling that you feel like empowerment and just like a freaking badass, right? Like, do you notice,
Yeah.
like, do you feel that?
Totally. 100%. Actually, today I was lifting, like, I picked up heavier dumbbells and like, and I felt awesome. And yeah, and you're there and you're just like, and it's like, even if you're not like super defined, like, like when you're lifting, you have to bulge. And so you're like, look at my muscles. I love it, I love it. I mean, and it's, so where I live, not a lot of women lift in my gym, which is kind of sad. But like all the guys know me already. Like, like I go in there like when the bar, and I always look, it's like I'm the only one who does like deadlifts there. And so yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh, when I'm like deadlifting like 200 pounds and people are just like, like
Yeah.
watching, it's kind of cool. And like the fact that I remember when well, I have to do it. I have to work my way back up there. But
Mhm.
I back squatted like last time I was doing heavy lifting regularly. I think I got my back squatted to like 180, and I came home and I was like, babe, if there's a fire, I can carry you out of the house, because that's about what my husband weighs. I was like,
Oh
I
my
got
gosh.
you, I got
I
you.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So on that note, do you have any like advice for maybe any women who might be listening who are kind of scared to even take that first step to not just join a gym, but like go over to the dumbbell rack and pick
Yes.
up a dumbbell or even pick up a barbell? Like what what advice do you have for women who are kind of nervous to do that?
No, it's totally intimidating. And I'm someone that was super self-conscious working out for most of my life. And like, when you're even just like not just being a woman, but being a bigger woman, and always like, are they gonna make fun of me? And there's a whole thing. And when I was younger, as I don't know, there's like, all that like past trauma, right? And so, but I realized like if everyone there is just doing their thing, like first of all, if you if you are going to the kind of gym where it seems like social hour and people are there like hanging out, like get a new gym. If you're gonna, people should be like working out. Like this isn't
Yeah.
happy hour. So, and just start, start light. Don't go for the first day at the gym and pick up the 20-pound dumbbells. Like even if you start with 5 or 8 or 10-pound dumbbells, you will work your way up. And I really think that everyone should, like, there's a lot of resources out there, like YouTube
Hmm.
videos and stuff. But I think that if you have never lifted before, get a trainer, work with someone like Rachel, because you need to like have the proper form. Because I mean, even me, like I'm at the gym and I see these guys and I'm like, oh dear Lord, they're back. They're like flailing around, like trying to just get, like no form whatsoever.
Hmm.
Because that's a big one. Like, and I was lucky enough to have a friend teach me. But I mean, I have no ego. Like, I can't deadlift 200 pounds right now. I took like 2 months off of like heavy lifting, and I went back the other day and I was trying to do like reps with like 120, and I was like, oh my God, struggle bus. So you have to get, no, there's
Yeah.
no ego there. You have to leave
Yeah.
your ego at the door and go in and just do the work, and be consistent and just like keep at it. And yeah, don't worry about it. Like, people aren't there. I just realized, like, no one's there judging other people. No one's there.
No
No
one
one's gonna
cares
say. No
about
one
anybody but
cares.
exactly.
Yes, they have their headphones in, just like
Exactly.
blinders on.
Hmm. Yeah, like no one, and there's a switch that went off in my head too. It's like when I was, sometimes I would have, a little bit fear like, am I, I'm not lifting that as heavy as this other chick over here. Like I kind of feel, eh.
Right.
But then I'm like, who cares? Like all they're thinking about is their self. Like
They're
no
probably
one
counting.
cares,
Yeah,
right?
they're counting reps in their head. They're not
Exactly.
thinking about you.
No one cares. So just go in, exactly, check you at the door, but also understand the importance of being safe and understanding what you're doing and being educated on, like you said, proper form. And also not just like the form part of it, but also understanding like, you should be feeling your muscles working. Like you should, it's this whole concept of mind muscle connection. So
Right.
if you do want to build muscle and change your body, it's not just about, how much you're lifting, it's also how you're lifting. Which is, I think, another concept that a lot of people are like, it's another thing with the ego too. It's like, okay, if you don't have proper form, if you're not getting that mind muscle connection, like, don't go heavier. Like, let's
Right.
figure this out first and then, work your way up.
For
Um,
sure.
but yeah, so I just think, I don't know, I just think lifting weights and resistance training is just so empowering for women. And if you're not doing
Yes.
it, it's like, this is actually a little, I just want to make this note. My mom, she's almost 60 years old, and I finally convinced her to start lifting weights. And so she got a trainer about a month and a half ago now. And she's like, I've never felt so good. And she's starting slow, but she went and she got a trainer at her gym. She used to go and do spin classes like 2 or 3 times a week. She still does her spin class because she likes that. She does it once a week, but then she does lifting twice a week with her trainer. And she's like, I feel so much stronger. I already see changes. And she's almost 6 years old. And it's like, it's never
Amazing.
too late. Just do it. And another thing is that, like, if you want to live long and live, a good, healthy
Right.
life and be able to get off the toilet when you're 80 years old, like, sitting on the treadmill for an hour or standing, walking, whatever, running on the treadmill for an hour is not going to do that. Like you need to build the muscles in your butt and your
Right.
legs so that you can sit on the toilet and get off of it and feel like obviously
Yeah.
you need to do that. It's like it's part of, living your life and being and setting yourself up for just feeling like a
Yeah.
badass your entire life.
Thinking like functional movement, like it prevents injury, and I'm really big on like the big ones. Like I stick to very like functional movements, like those movements of pulling down, pulling up, deadlift, back squat. Like when you think of, and this goes back tying into like, you think of ancestral health, the movements we do are the same. Think about the kind of muscles that you would use if you were doing like building shelters,
Mhm.
carrying tree logs. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's interesting because there's so many things, like, and you do see such a difference. Like the way that it changed the shape of my body, like deadlifts, back squats, lunges, like doing bent over rows, bench press, like it's incredible.
Mhm.
It shapes you. Like cardio will never do that. Like I'm the one Cuban girl on the planet that didn't have a bubble butt. Like my sisters both got the bubble butt. Not all Latin women are blessed. I had a pancake butt, and like I now have a round butt because of the gym.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it also takes time. Like it doesn't happen
Mhm.
overnight.
Right.
Building muscle takes time. I just had someone in my keto form program yesterday ask me like literally the question was, how long does it take to build muscle? And I'm like, well, it depends on a lot of different factors of what you're doing, but it's not going to happen overnight. So you got to play the long game with it for sure.
For sure.
So yeah, I feel like we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So I want to ask you kind of uh, I don't even know what they call these questions, just a random question that I like to end with. So, if you had, based off of all the things we talked about, if you had one superpower, what would it be?
It's an interesting one. If I had one superpower, what could it be? I wish that I could like I wish that there was like a superpower where you could like zap someone and they would have like the confidence, like you know what I mean, like to do what they need to do. Because I think that confidence is one of the biggest things that why women don't go after their goals or are scared to eat that sweet potato, or you know, people don't have confidence in themselves, they don't trust themselves. And so if I could like have a superpower I could give people confidence, that would be it.
Oh my God. Literally, that's the best answer ever.
Thank you.
And I 100% agree. Confidence is so important for literally anything. That's like my tagline is change your body, change your mind, change your confidence, change your life. It's
Yeah,
like so important.
yeah.
Um, awesome. So, anything cool on the horizon that you
Yeah.
got
So
going on?
shameless book plug. So yeah. So there's been a here.
Yeah.
I just got like actually like 50 copies of this. So my book made Whole Made Simple. It's my second book, and this one it does cover metabolic flexibility, and it covers like nutrition from a foundational perspective, like digestion, hydration, and mineral balance, fatty acid balance, blood sugar regulation, and it has a whole section on like the ancestral template and
Mhm.
why staying flexible is important, not villainizing these whole food carbs when needed, right? And I use
Mhm.
examples of like who would benefit, who wouldn't. I'm really excited about this book. And there's 140 easy recipes. So all the recipes are sheet pan, one pot, pressure cooker, slow cooker. And all the recipes in the book are low carb because like you said, that's home base, you know, and I
Mhm.
totally agree. But it's easier to just like make the awesome low carb meatballs and add a sweet potato if you want to have carbs and like, you know, omit them, right? Yeah, so that's super exciting. I'm going on book tour in March and I'll be in San Diego, so I get to see
Yeah.
your face in real life. And yeah, Body Wise
Awesome.
podcast. I too recently launched the podcast and hopefully more exciting things in the future. But for now, go buy my book because it's awesome.
Yeah, and definitely one thing I want to note too on the recipe, like you grew up, your mom is a cook. She runs a restaurant in Miami, which where is because I
It's on
obviously like
Alhambra. Yeah, yeah, it's on Alhambra in between
okay,
Ponce and Salcedo in the Gables. You
okay,
know
so,
where the Globe is? No. Okay,
maybe
it's in downtown Coral Gables. She like
okay.
caters for all the time.
I've probably honestly eaten her food,
Yeah.
but I don't remember. But yeah, I'm actually probably going back to Miami over the summer, so I'm definitely gonna check it out.
Awesome.
But on that note, like you grew up in a family and your mom cooked and she actually taught you like how to cook and like the flavors and things like that. And so what I noticed like with your cookbook, and it's something like this is what I struggled with when I was writing my book, or at least the recipes in it. I was like, yeah, I know flavor profiles, but I kind of just put a few spices here and there and that, and you know it works and it's good, but like to for you, it's like you actually like understand the different flavor profiles and how to cook different things like down to the actual science of cooking, but you make it so easy.
Thank you.
And like I've made tons of recipes from your first book, Made Whole, and I'm like, damn, these taste so good.
Thank you.
So I'm super excited to try the recipes from Made Whole, Made Simple. I love those titles. Those are awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, made whole means to heal, like to make whole. And so the second one is all about healing made simple and accessible for everyone.
Amazing. I love it. So where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so I'm at the Castaway Kitchen on Instagram, on Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest. Thecastawaykitchen.com is my blog, and I have tons of free recipes on the blog and a bunch of resources as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, and I hope
Yeah.
everybody learns a lot too. So thanks for being
Thank
here.
you. Bye, everyone.